Right. Let's get into this. Today, we are doing a deep dive into, well, a real tension. One of our main sources actually called it the Great Betrayal. It's this fundamental conflict between, demanding excellence and maybe just accepting mediocrity in the workplace today.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here, and you see this when you pull the sources together, is that it's not just a management thing or culture, it's deeper, structural.
Hmm.
We're looking at connections between these huge, unavoidable macro challenges. Think shrinking labor force globally,
Yeah.
major demographic shifts, the projections go out to 2050, and then connecting that right down to the micro
The
level.
human level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Solutions rooted in, well, human neuroscience,
Yeah.
critical thinking, how our brains actually work.
And AI. We have to
Yeah.
figure out how AI fits into all this because these crises, they're not sequential. They're hitting us all at once right now. So our mission today really is to give you the shortcut. The essential knowledge you need to grasp the kind of evolution organizations need to survive this period. Let's start the deep dive.
Right, so we really have to begin with those macro forces. The timeline itself is, well, it's staggering. You remember those projections from way back 1987, the Workforce 2000 book?
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of sobering, isn't it? How much of what they predicted about the economy demographics is actually playing out right now?
It really is.
They saw the skills gaps coming decades away. And what's really frustrating when you look back is how they flagged the mistake of downplaying vocational programs, really robust ones.
And we didn't listen.
Seems like it. Our data suggests we're now maybe 15, even 20 years behind where we should be in addressing that specific skills gap.
Wow. And then looking ahead, the demographic numbers are just stark. We've got Pew Research data. Okay, it's from 2008, but looking towards 2050. It shows the overall population going up, but the actual working age population, 16 to 64.
Going down, projected decrease of 5%.
5%. That's the absolute core of the problem. And it's driven mostly by, well, declining birth rates, which leads to that really blunt conclusion you find in the sources. We simply cannot birth our way out of this situation.
Mhm.
And layered on top of that, you've got these huge shifts in diversity. Those same projections showed the Hispanic population likely doubling to maybe 30% of the workforce,
And the white population.
dropping from about 67% back in 2005 down to a projected 47% by 2050.
So any significant workforce growth, it has to come from immigration, essentially, from foreign-born hires, because the domestic numbers just aren't there to sustain things.
That's the implication, and that feeds directly into this economic sustainability challenge. It's defined by something called support ratios.
Ah, yes, McKinsey tracked this right. The ratio of people working versus those over 65.
Exactly. Employed individuals supporting retirees. Historically, the U.S. had a pretty remarkable ratio, nearly 6 workers for every retiree.
Which is how systems like, Social Security, Medicare, how they were designed to function. That was the assumption.
But by 2050, if these trends hold brick rates, demographics, that ratio is projected to just plummet, down to just over 2 workers per retiree.
2 to 1, that just doesn't work, does it?
It's simply unsustainable. And look, this isn't just a U.S. issue. You see versions of this playing out globally.
You mentioned China before we started dealing with that specific male crisis
Yeah.
due to the long-term effects of their population policies.
Right. It's a massive societal issue. If you have a whole generation of men facing challenges with companionship, social isolation, think about the psychological stress.
Yeah.
You have to ask, how focused can they really be on driving culture forward? Innovation, economic well-being, it just becomes this huge drag on productivity.
So, okay, let's pull these threads together. You've got the skills gap we didn't fix. You have the declining support ratio, the aging workforce.
Yep.
It all points to a shrinking labor pool.
A smaller pool facing continued, likely growing, demand for products and services.
So we have to do more, significantly more, with significantly fewer people.
And that necessity creates what the sources call the AI imperative. It's not a luxury. Since demographics won't bail us out, the big question becomes, how does AI help create the efficiencies needed for this smaller workforce?
But crucial.
Crucially, and all the sources really stress this, AI has to be brought in thoughtfully, in a way that keeps humans and their unique needs, their cognitive realities, right at the center of whatever solution we build.
Okay, so if those macro forces are the engine driving the need for change, then the human brain, that's where things get complicated, right? That's where the friction happens. We need to shift from the numbers to the messy reality of neuroscience.
Exactly. Couldn't have put it better. Our sources really hammer this home. The brain is fundamentally social. It's tribal. It is hardwired deep down to seek out familiarity, predictability. It wants to feel cared for, valued within its group.
And this isn't just, soft skill stuff. It's actual chemistry, isn't it? Like oxytocin release when we connect positively.
Absolutely. It's biology, which is exactly why psychological safety isn't just some corporate buzzword of the month. It's a biological necessity.
Okay.
It's really the only reliable way you can create an environment where people feel safe enough to offer up their best ideas, their insights, without that fear of being shot down or ostracized.
Right. And this connects to the idea of mental models, which sounds complex, but the sources describe them as like neurochemical pathways, highways in the brain.
That's a great way to think of it.
Huh.
There are these connections that basically house the instructions for what we believe, how we think, and ultimately how we act.
And we don't choose them consciously initially. We pick them up from our environment.
A lot of them, yes. Think about it like this. Someone might learn conflict avoidance really early in life. Maybe in childhood, they were always told, just obey authority, don't speak out of turn.
Keep your head down.
Right. So that model gets embedded. When conflict arises, disappear. That's how you stay safe. But then, professionally, they're suddenly expected to just step up and be strong.
Ah, okay. So the workplace demand is basically telling someone, ignore that lifelong survival instinct. The very thing your brain thinks keeps you safe.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The professional expectation often just completely ignores the neuroscience of how that person learned to navigate their world. It sets up an internal conflict.
Wow. Okay.
And speaking of ignoring how the brain works, let's talk about multitasking.
Yeah.
This myth that just won't die in corporate culture.
Oh, yeah. The idea that the best performers are the ones juggling 20 things simultaneously.
Well, the data we have now is crystal clear. The brain operates in series, strictly. It cannot actually process multiple complex tasks at the exact same time.
So what is it doing?
It's task switching, very rapidly sometimes, which looks like multitasking from the outside. But every single switch has a cognitive cost,
Meaning?
meaning loss of productivity, increased chance of errors. Your brain burns energy with every switch.
So when companies set up these really transactional work environments, constant emails, pings, switching between projects.
They are, quite literally, setting people up to fail. They're encouraging mistakes and draining people's limited cognitive resources, all while thinking they're promoting agility.
Okay, so the brain resists that kind of complexity. And it really resists change, doesn't it? Because change messes with our internal balance, homeostasis.
Absolutely. That resistance isn't just stubbornness. It's rooted deep in our survival mechanisms.
Yeah.
We're talking about the limbic system, sometimes called the reptilian brain.
Primal stuff.
Very primal. Any new information, especially if it feels like it threatens the status quo, gets filtered through this ancient system first.
How does that work exactly?
So, a potential change enters our awareness. Instantly, it hits the amygdala, that's the brain's alarm bell, the fight or flight center.
Okay.
At the same time, the hippocampus, which is our memory center, like the brain's history book, starts pulling up past memories, especially frightening ones or times of instability. It's trying to find a reference point.
So the amygdala is yelling danger, and the hippocampus is providing evidence like, remember that last reorg, that was bad.
Exactly. And then the hypothalamus tries to regulate the intense emotional fallout from all that. So the human reaction to organizational change isn't just emotional preference, it's physiological.
Yeah.
It's protective.
Uh-huh.
And if people feel threatened or ignored or unseen during that change, their limbic system stays activated. It prioritizes their physical and emotional safety above all else.
Which means they can't really engage with the new thing.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It hinders their ability to contribute to any new strategy or process.
Yeah.
They're stuck in defense mode.
This makes so much sense of why change often feels like grief. You see those stages play out, right? The Kubler-Ross model connection, shock, anger.
Denial, depression. Absolutely. Because organizational change for many people represents a genuine loss.
Yeah.
A loss of predictability of their known reality.
Yeah.
We saw a really powerful example of this in the source material concerning the shift to flexible work models after the pandemic disruptions.
Okay, how so?
Well, for some, especially lower paid employees, this flexibility actually meant increased costs. Suddenly they're paying more for gas, maybe extra daycare. That financial stress, that friction
Kept them stuck.
kept them stuck in emotional states like maybe denial, this won't last, or even depression, I can't afford this. And when you're stuck there, you simply can't be expected to fully engage or contribute your best work towards the organization's goals. Your energy is elsewhere.
Okay, so that's the resistance. But there is a way through. The sources talk about neuroplasticity.
Yes, that's the hopeful part. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change, to rewire itself. It's the only way we can actually change those ingrained mental models, those neurochemical highways we talked about earlier.
But it's not easy, right? It takes work.
It takes discipline. The sources are very clear. There are 4 mandatory requirements to make neuroplasticity work and, importantly, make the change stick.
Okay, what are they?
First, and this is maybe the hardest, you have to be absolutely present to the mental model you want to change.
What does present mean here? Just knowing you have the habit.
It's deeper. It means radical self-awareness in the moment. You have to actually observe the model, that internal instruction as it's firing, as it's driving the behavior you want to stop, catching the thought or the impulse as it happens.
Okay, step 1, presence. What's 2?
Second, once you're present to it, you have to consciously identify multiple options for a different behavior. Not just one alternative, but several possibilities.
Got it. Multiple options.
Third, you prioritize. You deliberately choose one of those options as the new behavior you will try. You commit to a specific path.
Okay. Be present, find options, pick one. What's the final step?
And fourth, this is the crucial part that actually rewires the brain. Consistent, dedicated practice. You have to actively, repeatedly practice the new chosen behavior. That repetition builds the new neurochemical connection until it becomes stronger, until it becomes the new default instruction.
It sounds like if organizations truly want to adapt and tackle those huge demographic and economic challenges, we have to go back to basics, really focus on these fundamental human elements, like how we handle power and conflict.
Precisely. We can't build sophisticated systems on a shaky human foundation. We need that self-awareness around our own mental models concerning power. Am I leaning on my title, legitimate power, my expertise, or maybe unconsciously even coercive power, the threat of negative consequences?
Understanding your style.
Yes, because that style dictates how you interact, especially under pressure. And then there's conflict. The sources remind us conflict itself isn't good or bad, it's just energy.
It can be constructive or destructive.
Exactly. So we need to unpack our personal default conflict styles. You know, the common frameworks like Thomas and Kilman's. Are you typically avoiding?
Competing.
Collaborating. Accommodate.
And collaborating is usually the goal, the win-win.
Generally, yes. But even competing the win-lose approach can be appropriate in a genuine crisis situation where a quick decision is needed. The point is knowing why you default to a certain style and whether it actually serves the situation or just your comfort zone. You can't improve teamwork or innovation without better, more conscious conflict management skills.
Makes sense. But even before we get to managing conflict, there seems to be a more fundamental communication breakdown point, the whole idea of active listening. The sources call it a misnomer.
Yeah, this data point was pretty shocking, actually. It really helps explain why so many employees report feeling unheard, even when managers think they're listening.
Okay.
The science suggests that at any given moment, something like 11 million bits of information are trying to enter our consciousness. Through our senses, everything.
11 million? That's impossible to process.
It is, our conscious processing capacity. It's estimated to be around a mere 40 bits per second. 40.
Wow. Okay, so there's this colossal gap between input and actual processing.
A massive inherent processing deficit. Our brain is constantly subconsciously trying to manage this fire hose of information.
So when someone is talking to us, what's our brain actually doing with those limited 40 bits? How is it filtering?
It's running incredibly fast. Subconscious tests on the incoming information. The sources identify 3 main ones. First is the truth test.
Is this factually correct?
Basically, yeah. Does this align with my understanding of reality?
Okay.
Second is the value test.
Is this important to me?
Exactly. Is this relevant to my goals, my needs, my survival? Is it valuable for me to pay attention to this right now?
Okay, truth and value. What's third?
The third is indexing. This is where the brain tries to map the new information onto what it already knows. Does it fit with my existing mental models? Does it connect to past experiences? Does it conflict with anything?
So filtering for truth, value, and where it fits in my mental library.
All right, these 3 tests act as rapid filters, designed to whittle those 11 million bits down to the manageable 40.
Right.
But here's the kicker. Because our brain is constantly doing this filtering, this indexing, comparing, and because modern work environments demand so much task switching.
We're almost never fully present just listening.
Very rarely. Our cognitive resources are tied up in those subconscious tests. And that deficit, that gap, is a huge reason why so many people feel profoundly unheard at work and why so much communication just fails to land. So, to kind of bring this all together from our deep dive, we're staring down these future-defining, macro-level challenges, existential ones, really. A shrinking workforce, the support ratios getting completely out of whack.
Huge structural problems.
Huge. And we simply cannot hope to tackle those massive organizational structural issues if we don't fundamentally address the micro-level human realities first.
It all comes back to the brain.
It does. Understanding neuroscience, how we're wired.
Oh.
Learning how to manage resistance to change effectively using neuroplasticity. Getting serious about foundational communication skills, like overcoming that listening deficit.
And AI.
AI has to be seen, strictly, as a support mechanism in this context, something that honors and optimizes the human core of the organization. It cannot be a distraction, and it certainly can't be a replacement for addressing these fundamental human needs.
Which leaves us with maybe a final provocative thought for you, the listener. If understanding our own minds, our mental models, how we react to change, how we filter information, thinking critically about our own thinking, if all that is so fundamentally crucial, not just for professional success, but maybe even for broader economic stability, then why are we still seemingly so deficient in building educational structures from early on that actually teach people how to do that, how to think critically about their own internal world? That seems like the big challenge maybe for the next generation.